So, who is coming on? Can you remind me of his name?
Yes, his name is Colsen Joseph Goldrick. He is a musician from New York who is friends with one of the Haven members, Norman Baker. He is coming on to talk about a little bit of a personal philosophy that he has, which he calls true humanity, as well as talk about why he's interested in being a part of a space of growing leaders. He also just had he just announced a pregnancy, so I believe we'll have a lot of fun with. Can you hear us?
Yeah. Hey, nice to meet you.
It's good to hear from you, Colson. So we've spoken a little bit before, but just to reintroduce, I'm Jackson Austin South. Yes, and this is Alex Mustafaya. He is a writer who's been working alongside me and Norman to do some of the works that we're currently working on.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. Yeah. Also, can I ask you, if it's not too much of an issue, do you happen to have a pair of headphones you could put on?
Yes. So, as I was saying before, the reason that we are connecting with Colson today is because Colson is a very deep and intellectual person. He has he appears to have a lot of deep-seated thoughts, and he briefly mentioned to me once one of his thoughts, which he calls humanity. I am very interested to hear about this concept and understand it more.
Nice. Can you try speaking?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Chris audio.
So much better. So first off, congratulations, man.
Thank you. It's terrifying in the sense of both being terrific and of terror.
To reiterate, Colson just announced a pregnancy, and so he is, I'm sure, in a state of shock right now.
Shock is one word you can. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
What was the word you would rather use?
As I said before, probably terrific, because it really encapsulates both the excitement and the fear at the same time. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But I think no matter what, I'll be all right. You know, I'm kind of like eager for it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. Were you guys like trying for a while?
No, it was actually a complete accident.
Okay.
But you know what? Accidents happen. It's okay. I'm not against it. So.
Uh-huh. Do you feel ready and like excited for it?
Oh hell yeah, I do. I've had my fair share with being stepdaddy before, so like having my own kid is like yes, we've reached the end game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. Actually I don't. I don't have any kids. But I am really proud of you. I think you'll be a good father. I've heard really good things about you from my friend Norman, so I'm sure things will work out.
I think they will. Man, I miss Norman. I miss Norman to pieces. I hate it when I'm not in Rhode Island because, like, he and I am glad. He is one of the best people I can say that I've ever constructively met in my life, like, ever. Like, that guy he is a beast of nature in his own system. Like, he's incredible.
Uh-huh. He's a force to be around.
He really is. It's awesome.
Do you are you planning on staying in New York during the pregnancy, or are you still considering coming back to Providence?
My intention is when the baby is 6 months old, I'm going to be moving out there.
And you've known about the child for a year, or not a year, a day?
What do you mean? Oh, no. We hit second trimester. I didn't announce it because I didn't want to announce something in first trimester, because during first trimester is the highest probability for like miscarriages and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't want to say something and then end up, having the unfortunate event. I just kept my mouth shut on like social media about it until I knew like, okay, yeah, no, this is fully happening. Like, congratulations to me, I guess. Like, I'm kind of doing what everybody else kind of does.
That is wonderful. You did a really good job of hiding that. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So to get into the meat of things a little bit, you've mentioned to me once, and we have it on our website, this concept of true humanity.
Yes.
We had a very brief conversation about it, but seeing that a lot of the people in Haven are very socially focused, or at least we think a lot about human interaction, we're kind of curious what this concept is and what brought you to it.
So it's kind of like it's very personal to me, because I view true humanity as more like a not so much like a way of life, but more like a philosophical way to live. True humanity is the idea of taking everything that's going on around you and applying it to everything that's going on inside of you. Because in day-to-day life, like you could be at work, like this is just a hypothetical situation. You could be at work and, you're having a really crummy day. You're feeling like the weight of a lot of stuff that's been stressing you out right now is kind of getting on your shoulders a little bit. And outside of you, 4 or 5 feet away, you got somebody else who's like, yo, I just proposed to my wife last night, and I'm super duper happy. And it's in that polarization between two people that, I feel in modern times is lost. That's a human connection that we all share, which is, what all of us go through on daily basis, and, what the energy gives us from the universe and the energy that we give back to the universe almost spiritually, And the idea is using the outside world as an influence to how you're going to view your inside world as a way of like self-reconstruction, from ongoing stress and whatnot. It's almost like kind of like a coping mechanism, but it's more of a philosophy and a way of life.
How do you apply it in your day to day? Like, have you applied it in this past week?
Personally, I apply it every day that I live, because it's being aware of your surroundings. And when you feel that you need to make a big decision over something that's bothering you, or something that might not be bothering you, but something that might seem super rewarding, it's the idea to constructively view other people's experiences to help you shape what you could do with your experience. A lot of people view it as something that's common sense, but with true humanity, it's putting more focus into something like that than you typically would. Like another person would be like, oh, well, this guy, had a situation where, he was in the same position as you and look at what happened. It's not necessarily that. It's something that's more difficult to explain, because instead of viewing what other people did to themselves in the outside world, it's what the outside world is going to do to you in your inside world. It's viewing the process backwards.
Yeah, I'm grasping at some of the concepts he said. I want to ask you this. So, I'm understanding some of the concepts of your personal philosophy, but one thing I'd like to hear is if you were to describe it as one whole in a few paragraphs to someone like me, who, aside from what you just said, has never heard of it before. Could you please do that for some people watching at home right now?
You broke up right towards like what you were saying towards the end of it.
Okay, so I'll just start over.
Okay.
So, I really liked a lot of the ideas you just said. I find them really interesting. What I would like you to do is to basically repeat the concepts that to basically speak of your personal philosophy as a whole, in a way that someone like me, who, aside from what you just said, has never heard of it before. Just basically in a few paragraphs, could you explain in a way that anyone could understand
Okay.
What your philosophy stands for?
So the whole point in the end is with true humanity, is to keep a focus on what's going on inside of you, how you're feeling, how you're going throughout your day, whether it's good or bad, and applying that to the world that's outside of you, and taking what's going on with the world that's outside of you and applying that to how you're going to feel about what's going on throughout your day. It's to be in a constant remainder of, or not constant remainder, but it's in a constant cycle of, construction to build. It's not supposed to be something that's viewed negatively. It's where every thought is constructive from inside to outside, and how you're it's observing your inside and your outside life at the same time, What the fuck just happened?
I see. So, would you say it's like, basically not viewing there being, some kind of barrier between your mind and the outside world, but instead just viewing them as, forces that work in tangent?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great.
That's actually a really concise way to put it. I had a more convoluted process in my brain because things get convoluted up in there before they come out.
Yeah, that's actually, when I speak of my personal philosophy, is very similar. Jarrison, do you have a question to bounce off of that with? Jarrison?
You are muted, friend.
Yeah, I did that because there was a lot of wind. I just realized. I am trying to put myself into a time and place where a situation is occurring, and I would find, and I could use true humanity to deal with the situation. Like, is this something that's useful for times of action, like say in an emergency situation, or is this something more for like a time of deliberation when things are at peace?
I would say it's something it's a philosophy that's more meant to be lived actively throughout your life, not necessarily like in an important situation where immediate action is required. Because in my personal opinion, if there's a situation where action is required, you are obligated as a human to act. Like, that's just like my personal opinion on it, but it's more of a day-to-day life thing, going on as you progress, moment to moment, day to day, opportunity to opportunity.
So could you give us an example of one of the most recent times where you found this concept to be useful? I'm really trying to figure out how I can adapt it.
It's because the hard thing about that is it's not something that, it's more of like a mindset. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain like a specific time where like, oh, I've used this in that moment. It could be as simple as when one time I had a conversation with Norman. And this was when he had last seen me. I was in my Volvo. This was like the last time I visited, most recently, a couple weeks ago. And I was talking to him about what I had been going on with my friends and how I was treating the relationships that I had. And by relationship, I mean to the definition of relationship with Thuma slang, where you have more than one, cooperation with a person and it builds an actual relationship, and how I was viewing what other people were saying to me and how was every single thing that I was going to say, how is that going to affect them and their outside world and what their perception of the conversation is, and how is that perception from them going to affect me? It's almost like thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead in a conversation, but at the same time trying to stay fluid in the moment with what you're currently feeling. It's what it is. It's like it's a communications philosophy, I guess, for a lack of better words.
So do you feel like it has helped you better understand people?
Fully, in my personal opinion, because my relationships that I was having with people, they began to improve. I started getting more constructive feedback with things I was doing. I started getting more confidence between friends of mine. It helped strengthen relationships because I wasn't so inwardly focused. I was inwardly focused and outwardly focused as much as I could be at the same time. I was keeping full round of everything.
So you're like monitoring your inner situation and also monitoring everyone else's inner situation in the room at once.
Yes, because under no circumstances is this kind of mindset supposed to be used to deconstruct somebody, such as, like a lot of people like to use terms like gaslighting, but I think like ego deconstruction, where you get into a conversation with somebody and the conversation gets negative, and then that person starts to say things that deconstruct who you are or your ego. This is something that is meant to constantly build and create with every conversation you have, because under the idea of true humanity, you should never be trying to disassemble something. You should always be trying to grow something with another person, whether it's something physical or metaphorical or something personal in a relationship, like moving a relationship from, being significant others back to platonic friends or vice versa.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You literally, Jerison, you literally just said, well, the exact words that were in my head just now.
And I used the word the cure for separation because one thing that I had realized, and as I said, like I used poetry as a visceral form of self-identifying, meaning I intentionally cut wounds on myself in order to expose the meat inside of what I was feeling and allow that to break open and bloom. You know what I mean? So when I had this feeling of I keep getting separated from people, I keep losing relationships, I've moved so often. I don't come from a very family oriented background. I've been self-sufficient since I was 16, so like to me, I had huge attachment issues because of a lot of abandonment throughout my early childhood. And I found this to be the cure to maintain strong, healthy relationships with every person that you come into contact with. So that way, if years go by, the only memory that this person is going to have of you is hopefully going to be a positive one, where even if something negatively happened, they still have the amount of creation and, forward movement and perspective with that person's life. It's to make sure that although bad things happen, you have to pluck bad tree from a fruit. You have to pluck bad fruit from a tree in order for more good fruit to grow.
Have you ever considered writing about this or trying
You
to?
certainly should if you haven't.
Huh?
I was just saying you certainly should if he has not already.
I'm currently writing a book of the collection of poems that I used, and I was thinking about using that as like a way to start how I was going to write like this, like not necessarily like a novel, but like almost like I don't know, like just a philosophical reading of what true humanity is, because it's more like it's a lifestyle that really focuses on, self-respect, self-honoring, while consistently, as much as you honor yourself on the inside, you have to honor somebody else that you're in contact with on the outside. No matter how much construction you put into yourself on the inside, you have to construct somebody on the outside as well. It's about sharing everything that you do.
And we're live. Back again with Haven Village Online. We are changing this format just slightly. We aren't doing a live stream for this recording, but we will be uploading this to Jason's Game of Life because, unfortunately, due to a storm, the computer that we were using to broadcast the live stream is now dead. There was a blackout. However, Colsen has graciously agreed to continue our conversation, and we will be turning this into something that we can upload later. So hope you guys enjoy. Let's get started. So Colsen, how are you doing again?
I'm still doing pretty good, brother.
I'm really happy to hear that. You so you just now expressed a lot of stuff, a lot of your inner consideration on the concept of true humanity. And so what I would love to do for this next segment is talk about this concept that you said of growing something together, and ask how you and I can use our time to grow something that's beneficial for both of us, and like really helps me cement my ability to make Providence a support system for you when you get here.
You know, since I think the one thing is our relationship is still very new,
Yes.
I think the best thing for us right now, especially when it comes to growing a goal, is something like that. I think would come more naturally between us. You know, the more that we talk, this is our first, really in-depth conversation. And with the time that we've had, I've gotten to know a good deal about you, and I'm vibing with the whole personality that you got going on. And I think that we could be very constructive together in the future. I'm just not too sure where our relationship is going to develop yet, since I think maybe one or two more conversations, and I'll be able to approach you with something big. Probably related somewhere along with what I'm doing musically, and maybe with the book that I'm writing. I always prefer criticism, and always a little bit of guidance is always appreciated by others around me.
What this book, you've mentioned it twice now. Is there like an overall aim with the poetry that you're creating?
Yeah. The book is called Romances and Elegies.
Could you also introduce the book for the viewer?
Absolutely. The book that I'm writing is called Romances and Elegies. It is a series of poems where the first part are romances and the second part is elegies. When I was probably in my mid-adolescence, I heard a song by a very heavy metal band called Make Them Suffer, and the name of the song was called Elegies. And the lyrics are very passionate, very emotion-driven, and that was one of the first songs where I looked up the lyrics and I read them, and I fell in love with what the guy said more than I enjoyed the song. And I took a lot of the words pretty personally, because I was a sad boy when I was little, sad boy 24/7. And I started thinking about the song when I started going through, like typical emotions and, strives and, mistakes and, successes that you go from your adolescence to your young adult life. And my poems, each of them are something that I have experienced, whether it was something I personally experienced or a conversation that I had with somebody else. And they are all put down into how I conceive poetry to be written, put together in a nice order, and each poem resembles something that I have personally experienced with somebody that has had an impact that I can relate that original song to. So it's kind of like, it's not that every single poem is about that song, but that influence and that vibration of what an elegy is and what a romance is and what heart-driven feelings are is embedded into every poem.
And an elegy it's sort of like an ode to a woman, right?
Well, an elegy is more like an ode to, or a lamentation to the deceased. Yeah. Where obviously, like, everybody knows what a romance is. It's a romance. An elegy is something that is more of where love existed and then something caused it to cease rapidly, or somebody passed away.
Yeah, that is. It sounds like you have a large mix of very positive and also very mournful poetry.
Yes. Yes, I do. And life has its ups and its downs. Mine, however, had really high ups and really low downs.
Do you think you could, I don't know if you have any memorized or if you have any on hand, do you think you could potentially read one?
Absolutely, actually. Hold on one second, and I'll find a way to figure that out, and I could get one up without losing the call, because it's not going to be too hard.
I'm excited to see. Listening to another person's considered thoughts is one of the most wonderful things that you can do, because when someone writes, they're really expressing from their the deepest aspect of their perspective. And so to hear that is always wonderfully eye-opening. It helps me understand another person a lot better sometimes than having a conversation with them. Good.
I absolutely agree with that. It might come off a little bug because I'm loading a lot of information on the laptop right now, but it'll be canceled.
I totally get that. I believe I can tell that your laptop is doing a lot right now. I also really enjoy what seems like your willingness to get to know the group that has been working to develop themselves out here. Your interest in talking to Samantha is something that I think will be really good for her and her growth, especially as she is learning how to speak about her ideas and present them. And I feel like you guys will both have the opportunity to overcome and understand each other because of your because of the fact that you guys both have really deep ideas that have been sitting inside of you for a bit.
Pick a number of 1 through 98.
97.
Okay.
This is a lot of poetry.
Yeah, I have 98 posts. I'm on the Poetry's Instagram, which is Poems by Cole. It's pretty, self-explanatory, to say the least.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull that up. This is a happier one. I often find passion in the vision of someone's hand to paper, to write images, pictures in the form of words that signify meanings of imaginary vocalization, titled as literature. You write out emotions, and I hear you in my skull. Is this synesthesia or is this love?
Do you write these about an emotion or about something that's happened in your life?
Typically, it's about instances that have happened. Sometimes I write them about how I'm feeling, but the majority of them are events that have occurred.
So what was the inspiration for this piece? Does it have a name?
The name of the poem is called Synesthesia. Someone that I had known a few years ago was a very close friend of mine, and her and I both have a thing called synesthesia. We have different forms of it, but essentially what it is one of your senses gets confused chemically with emotions. So with hers, it was the sense of like certain colors. So it was her vision. And for me, it's certain tactiles, like what things feel like, and what that means is like, if I feel something that I don't like how it feels, it could make me really upset emotionally. It's something that it's not like bipolar or anything. It's just like, it's a small chemical imbalance in the brain that is usually like, it's rapid. It's a rapid firing thing. It's not like I touch something and now I'm sad for 45 minutes. It's I touch it. It's, you know what I mean? But that's kind of what it is. It's not exactly that, but it's the best way to explain it.
I really love the imagery of a person who just has like a tile of their special sad material. Whenever they want to feel sad, they just walk over and
just rub it a little bit. Give that a good old rub.
And then they just get sad for exactly 45 minutes.
Literally, it's my daily dosage. You know what I'm saying? But so what I was saying that was, I said to write images, pictures in the form of words. She used to draw, and she drew a nickname for me, like with the words. She drew something. So I titled that as literature, because technically you're writing something out that is literate, even though it's an image now. It's not necessarily the word, and that's when I said, you write out your emotions and I hear them in my skull. Is this synesthesia, like what her and I had, or is this love? It's the moment that I realized I fell in love with that person.
That's insane. They drew their name for you?
They drew, like, I had a nickname that this person used to call me, and it was mitosis. Don't ask me how she came up with it. She said it one day, and she drew it in one of her old school notebooks. And when I was helping her, pack some stuff up around and put her stuff in boxes into storage, her and I found that book, and she showed it to me, and I was like, oh, damn, like, it's been like 3 or 4 years since you wrote that. And then she was like, yeah, it was like, she went into detail about what it meant to her. So it's something that stuck with me. And like, that was that moment where I looked at her that one time and I was like, and I have fallen in love with you. Shit. And I appreciate it. So yeah, my poems are often pretty short, and they're often very emotionally invoking. So I tell people to read with their own discretion.
Uh-huh.
But yeah,
I used to write a lot. I still write occasionally, but most of my writing has now been in the form of books. I don't know if Norman's mentioned what he and I have been working on.
not much. He's been pretty vague with it, to be honest.
Right. I would understand that because it sort of started off. The idea has blossomed a lot lately, but we're writing about. I mean, a preliminary name for the book. It's definitely not the name we're deciding on. It's just something that got thrown around the other day. It's something in the realm of primer or ignition.
Okay.
And that's because the book is particularly designed for someone who is on the cusp of self-actualization.
Okay.
And it's meant to inspire the reader to understand that the only way they can get past something we call the void, which is a sense of lacking in purpose, is to take their life into their own hands and start to develop the concepts that they cherish into constructs that can be helpful for them and others, and can also become methods of survival, like through money or otherwise.
Yeah. I like that idea a lot. And he sent me a Snapchat of like his notes that he had scribbled up on it on a pad a couple of weeks ago. And like I read through it a little bit, but like I was at work, so like it was one of those like I look at it a couple seconds, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back to him on that. And then he and I never resumed that conversation. So I'm actually really happy though, because like since Snapchat and connecting with him on that, Norman and I are frequently communicating out here, because let me tell you, I hate being in New York. I want to move back.
Why don't you like it out there?
It's the specific area in New York I'm in is Long Island, and I'm in Suffolk County in Brookhaven. And the stuff going on over here right now with just COVID alone, like how many cases does Rhode Island have? I'm pretty sure you guys are like, what, $140, $150-ish?
We're pretty low.
We have almost 14,000. And it's really messed up because New Yorkers have this pride and this I don't give a fuck attitude. And I love that part about New York, but at the same time, it's just no matter where you go, unless you're in a stupid expensive area, it's always dangerous. It's not safe to functionally raise a family the way that you want to. Property taxes are way too expensive. Rent is way too expensive. Taxes are too high. It's very difficult to live in the state of New York no matter where you go. And that's one of the reasons why people hate it so much. Besides the fact that our governor, Andrew Cuomo, is a meme right now because of a picture he has when he's wearing his nipple piercings, and now it's on the internet, and people are making fun of the governor, and no one takes him seriously. And the fact that he took so long to react to the COVID-19 situation, like I look at what's going on in New York, and I look at how Rhode Island's treating everything, and it's like the amount of respect for the people in the state is different. And to me, it's more on a governmental level, on a personal level. I love Rhode Island. I was raised there as a little kid. So to me, it's more like home. But as an adult, too, functionally, the government's better out there.
Uh-huh.
It's New York is a place that you go if you need to make money, good money, fast, and get out. That's it. That's all New York is. It's a money pit that you got to get in, take what you want, you got to leave, and you got to go somewhere where you can spend it appropriately. Because spending it in New York, it's like when you go to the food court in the airport. It's gonna be more expensive, but it's right there. It's the same thing in New York. Everything's more expensive, but it's right there. All the money's right there. You just got to go get it. And if you try to live there while you do it, you're not gonna have fun. You're gonna struggle, unless you make like bank.
That's rough. I have always found New York to be I always viewed it as my playground. As in I live in Rhode Island, but I would go out there, become friends with people, and then sort of explore inside of the city as well as the communities. And then when I was done with that, I'd come back home and go on to the next thing. But I've never considered living there, although I have wanted to, because it seems like a great place to get connected to some very big things.
I agree. The city especially, that's the one thing, there's a lot of creative energy and there's a lot of people, and when you have creative energy and you have a lot of people, there's plenty of stuff to go around. And the more relationships you build, the easier it is to get into things that could really blossom what you want to do and with what your image is and with what you're doing. It's just being there for an extensive amount of time. It's a very taxing emotionally and financially state to be in, because there's so much constantly going on,
And you guys are really being hit right now. It's awful. How could you tell me a little bit about the situation and maybe the viewer too? Like, I'm curious what your perspective is on the COVID situation in New York.
In my personal opinion, it took Andrew Cuomo a little while to put in the stay home order, where I have paperwork that I have to take in my car with me. I keep it on my person. So that way, if I get pulled over by a cop in the morning on my way to work, I have to show him this piece of paper that says, like, no, I'm an essential employee. I have to go to work. That's something that was supposed to be regularly enforced, and it's something that just wasn't, because you can't enforce something like that to the population of New York, because the population of New York will look at you and say, you can go fuck yourself. If I want to leave, I'm going to fucking leave. And that's just how it is, and when you have a government that doesn't necessarily have the control and the respect of people, the people don't respect the government and the people don't respect each other. And you'll have people that were going out to all the stores, wandering around, touching everything, coughing, not wearing a mask, not wearing gloves, not treating themselves with respect, and not treating the people that they're around with respect, putting other people in danger and putting themselves in danger. And all I could do as an employee at my job was sit there and say, hi, how are you? Welcome to Lowe's. Because there was no appropriate action taken over anything. Our store was without masks. We were without gloves for months. We were sold out, and then we didn't even have enough to give to the store for associates. We just got a care package a couple of weeks ago, and it's hard because New York can't keep up because of the amount of people inside of it and the percentage of the people that are getting things before other people do and not sharing with the community and stockpiling on certain things. Like we had a huge toilet paper shortage. We had paper towel shortage, gloves. We didn't have gloves. We didn't have masks. Then you had people who legitimately needed them, and we couldn't do what we're supposed to do in the company that I work for, which is Lowe's, and serve our customers and serve our people. We're all supposed to be there to help for each other, but nobody did anything about it. It's hard because in Rhode Island, like, people were enforcing that everywhere. It was on the signs on the highways. It was on every TV station. It was in the radio, because I listen to the radio in Rhode Island on my phone. I have the FM thing. I love Hot 106. You know what I mean? I've been listening to that station for years now. Love 106. And like out here, it was so seldom to hear about anything. When our stay-at-home thing was being mentioned, like, it wasn't being spoken about on the news every 7 minutes. It wasn't on the commercials on every single TV station. It was like almost difficult to find out the information. It wasn't until weeks after COVID became a super serious problem where New Yorkers had readily accessible information to find out everything that they needed about COVID. We had to go on other websites to find out stuff. I was looking at things from even other countries, just because New York wasn't really posting anything about it yet. All we got was fear tactic news, and that's all New York gets is fear tactic news. It was just difficult. It's like, it's one of those governments where, like, you can tell the state of New York is a corrupt government. It's just how it is. And the people suffered. We have almost as many cases in Manhattan as we do Long Island. And then literally 30 miles north, between a barrier of water with running active ferries, is Connecticut. And they have a fraction of what we're dealing with. And it's like, how is that possible? To me, as a regular person in the state, I ask, how is that humanly possible that this state allowed this to get that far and California is already healing? You know what I mean? It was a lack of respect and a lack of communication and just a lack of, awareness. It was like laissez-faire. They were hands off with it. They didn't want to deal with it because they were worried about scaring the people. So the media terrified the fucking public. Businesses got hurt. Some have been destroyed. And now New York is reaching deficits because of this. And it's
not likely that we're going to open up our economy again for another potential couple months.
And one of the biggest things is, I don't think that our state government realized, especially Andrew Cuomo, that New York is the capital of the world's trade. Everything goes through New York. If New York gets impacted like how we did, the whole friggin' world gets impacted like how we did. And we saw it. Look at what happened with Italy. Russia had to send us supplies, and all of a sudden everybody was like, yeah, thanks, Russia. But like literally just a couple of weeks ago, you were spewing hatred about them. And then literally not even 5 days after they dropped off this care package to us, we were spewing hatred about them again because of fear tactic news. And it was just like, this is the state that we live in. And like our local offices, in my personal opinion, and just where I'm in Brookhaven, they took safety countermeasures. The general state, to support its people, did not until 2 or 3 weeks, until after COVID became a problem in Long Island. Did Long Island see anything?
There's many of the countries outside of America are currently bad-mouthing us because of how much our inability to cope with the virus means that many of these other economies are going to be devastated.
Exactly. And then we have our president, and I only respect the president because he's the president, but we got this guy saying like, America's got the best healthcare, America this and America that. It's like, listen, buddy, if we had the best healthcare system, why the fuck did this happen? And why did China manage to get through it when it started there and they got through it faster than we have? Can you please explain to me how that happened? The quarantining that we did was not real quarantining. The stay-at-home orders that were given across, the different counties and in certain counties in the state, because it wasn't even statewide, were barely put into effect. They were lightly enforced. Our police department was literally told not to be pulling people over. Like, unless they're doing like felony speeding or there's something like really wrong where you have to pull them over, don't. And it's like, you're supposed to be enforcing stay-at-home leave. Why aren't you enforcing the stay-at-home leave? Rhode Island will pull over every single New Yorker in the state just for driving in the state. Rhode Island New York won't even pull over their own people just to tell them to go home and be safe. I could go on about it for hours.
It's gotten even more strict. We now, because Cuomo, he basically badmouthed Gina and said that what she was doing was discriminatory. She turned the pull over all New Yorkers order into pull over everyone that isn't a Rhode Islander order.
Exactly. It should be like that.
And I gotta say, I know we're a small state because we have about 1 million people. How many people? It's 8 million in New York City.
Yeah.
Right. But even if you guys are 8 times bigger than us, we only have 140 something cases.
What do you mean? We have way more than 140 cases.
Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. Dude, if you take just Suffolk County alone, which is the east end of Long Island, you and I, Rhode Island and Suffolk County, have just about the same amount of people. If you take just that segment, Suffolk County is bigger than Rhode Island, that one county. And we have so many more, even just outside of the city. And the city is where the big problem is right now. The city is it's hard to contain the city because, the
subway, everything's just nasty. It's all up on each other.
Well, I have to say, I do know that Amtrak did go down, and then they did clean their portion of the subway terminals and the train terminals. But Long Island Railroad to Penn Station didn't really do anything. They cleaned their trains. That's about it. They didn't actually clean the rails. They didn't clean the tunnels. They didn't do anything. It's like the CDC just couldn't affect them.
It's really and so outside of New York, we still have several states that aren't doing stay-at-home orders, like Arkansas, or I believe Michigan as well. They're just saying we don't need to enforce these lockdowns. Arkansas especially is saying, he actually, the governor there made it he is preventing counties from locking down their locations. He has told mayors and other state officials that they aren't allowed to enforce lockdowns.
Why would he be doing that?
I've purely because of he's in support with Trump and saying that this isn't a serious. This isn't. If his basic philosophy is he doesn't want the business economy to suffer, so there's no reason for these lockdowns to be put into effect.
Well, the business economy is run by people, and if people are getting sick and dying, what's the business economy going to do without the people operating it? You know what I mean?
I hear you. I don't get it myself, but that's this is really indicative of the people that we have in charge. How they're reacting in this emergency situation shows how our government is set up.
So much for serving and protecting the people.
Yeah. What do you final topic before we end this?
Of course.
How are you feeling about this 2020 election? Did you hear that Bernie officially pulled himself out of the primary?
I did, and I'm honestly pretty irritated by it because I used to not be a very big fan of Bernie Sanders. I only just started to really, agree with a lot of his ideologies recently, just because, I started really listening to what he was saying, and I started looking at his past as a person, and I was noticing a lot of contradictions with everybody else except for Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is the only guy that they really can't find scrap on him because there's not really any scrap to find on him, and I found that honorable in him. And a lot of things that I think need to happen with today's society, he's got the right point of view for it, and he's got at least a forward direction towards it. So when he dropped out, I was very frustrated because it was like, you just had my vote for the first time in almost 8 years. I started really paying attention to you, and I started giving you my consideration, and now you're dropping out right at the end of the race. You would have had enough populist voters to cause a recount. I don't know. There's something had to have been really behind it, but I'm really upset that he dropped.
I personally think that the DNC forced his hand.
It's almost like it's what happened last time, like he was forced to drop out way too early. Not to mention the problem with all the lobbying and shit going on as well.
It's like we act like the Democrats and the Republicans are so different from each other, but the non-progressive DNC seems to share almost the exact same ideologies as the Republican Party.
I think that there's a lot of things that the Republican Party honestly needs to check themselves on, because I have a lot of respect for the morality of the Republican Party when it's a non-toxic reality, but that's the thing. There's a lot of toxicity in both, the Democratic side and the Republican side of the government, where you have hyper socialism in the Democratic side, and then you have hyper conservatism in a lot of the Republican candidates where they become very disrespectful towards specific groups of people, including each other, and with the Republicans specifically, it's just like, we don't live in the society that we used to. We don't need to respect the views that we used to, and that's simply the way that the world works. Change needs to happen in order to grow, and the Republicans aren't focused on actually making change. They're just more focused on having everybody shut up and mind their own business, and that's not how things work. And that's why I started appreciating Bernie Sanders a lot, especially with the Democratic Party and the socialist side of things, was the amount of leverage speaking out actually causes, Fuck the Republicans.
His thought and his actions inspired so many of us. And if he was to be put into If Bernie Sanders was put into the presidency, I believe he could undo the damage to our name that Trump has caused.
I can get with that. I do know that there was a lot of good intention with Trump. It was just shrouded with idiocracy and a lack of respect. And unfortunately, if you're going to be a person of power, you need to have a couple of qualifying traits, and he kind of threw them right under the...
Well, I agree with